about relational breakthrough, supernatural relationships in this series. And tonight we're going to really be talking about personality uniqueness. And what we want to help everyone understand is that there's an innate personality profile that's foundational to building and strengthening relationships with another person. And when we apply the effort and the knowledge to deeply understand a person's unique personality and communication methods, a solid foundational relationship is constructed that then forbids emotions to dictate a relational and a relationship structure with individuals. I know it sounds technical and non-emotional, but it really is. There's these techniques in understanding this that really builds this behavioral communication between individuals. Now, first we're going to start with that understanding personalities. And each human has a unique personality profile. Now, not understanding or accepting this statement can lead to the cause of challenges between individuals. That's why it's so key that we understand each other in this more intimate way, because that brings this, what we have. And understanding that God's created mankind with several of these unique aspects and characteristics. However, not understanding and accepting this statement is one of the leading causes to relationship challenges. Now, there's 4 different types of personalities, and there's many different ways that people describe them. I like to use these because they're very clear, these different definitions, because it defines each one of them in a really clear way. And that's peace, fun, perfect, or control. Now, the one thing to understand when it comes to these personality types is, on an average, and there's always outliers of uniqueness to individuals that are different, but typically a person has more dominant of one of these 4. And then some have a secondary of a personality type that is close, that they work really close together. And then most people have the perfect or control or any of those other ones that are in a scoring mechanism a little bit lower. Now, there's been some that I've come across. I've seen thousands of these profiles, and there's every once in a while one show up with one of these 4 where they score a 0, meaning they don't have that. Typically, that's not a truly accurate statement, but it says it's really not very engaged into their personality types. So again, understanding what these 4 here are, what they have, and understanding the uniqueness to the degree that people flow in these. Now, the other one to understand about these different personalities is God gave us each one a true personality profile. However, life's experiences, life's challenges can sometimes form where these personalities don't come through the way they're supposed to, and that's called an adoptive personality. What we want to really understand and really strive to understand about ourselves and about others is what's our true personality versus the adoptive personality. Now let's walk through each one of these and understand what this really means. And this is very high level from this. There's so much research and so much science behind this, but also understanding there's a lot of spiritual elements to this that we'll do at a later time. But let's start with peace. And these are some of the, I guess I talked about, high level characteristics or traits of a person with a peace personality. And what they really want is to be calm, an environment that's calm around them. That's what they really want to have. They also have a desire to bring peace to everyone. They want us all to get along. And the other one is they just don't like confrontation. They will go to great lengths to avoid that or not be put in that position because it violates, as you can see, the calm of the first statement. So they work really hard to be people pleasers or accompanying people in the right way. Now, that's just who they are. We have to understand that. The next is we're going to talk about the fun personality. And they just want everything to be fun and joyful around them. And one of the things that they do, and again, it's different degrees. Some people have a lower degree of this and some have a very high degree of, they really want to be the life of the party. They love that attention. They'll bring and create elements to bring to that, so they're the life of the party. It could be through humor, it could be through behavior, all those other components of that. And they really want to understand is that in how they function, how they even do tasks, how they work, is they need to include a fun element to anything that they're doing. And so part of their jobs, you'll see those are the people that are really want to make sure that they're having fun, and they'll use humor and surround their communication style with humor. And some people are really good at it. It comes natural, and some aren't so good at it. And you've seen those and experienced all of those from that. So that's really what a fun personality looks to have. Now, a perfect personality trait is the number one thing they do is they want tasks done, but right. They want them to be completed correctly. And again, their definition of correctly is their definition. So your definition of doing it right will usually line up with their definition of doing it right, but that's the drive for them. The other one is that their time and effort efficiency is key to them being happy, to being unfrustrated. Now, a large majority of perfect personalities are list makers. They have a list to do a list to do a list to do a list. And part of their fulfillment or accomplishments on a daily basis is to check off the list. So they're really then important to have that in its plan. So they have a plan that they're putting out every day. So it's their plan, but it's a plan. Now, the one thing that'll really frustrate a perfect person, and you can see it come through as almost a forceful and somewhat aggressive behavior, is the non-accomplishment of a task. And it drives that frustration in, and then it will also come across in confrontational. So they're really just, because they're so driven by to get it done right, that they will then step in and do that. And so it's just a matter of understanding that about an individual. Control. Now, control personalities can be confused with perfect, but really the biggest difference is that their purpose is getting tasks completed. Doesn't always have to be perfect, but they want to get it done. And typically how that happens is they're going to take total control of situations and task completion. So it's just a matter of that where frustration between a perfect personality and a control is focused on I want to get it done. It seems to align with perfect, but not entirely, because they just want to get it done right. So that will always understand it comes to that. And you can see how that then from a peace or fun personality is going to be not as cohesive. Now, sometimes a high personality of control is going to be perceived as a bulldozer, meaning it's just going to run over or through things. And that's about going back to that to get it done element versus doing it done right or having fun or let's all get along. So again, the higher your score in each one of these, you're more dominant in these types of traits. Now, you'll see a control personality, they're the first to grab the lead, and this is done to ensure that it gets done their way. That's how they operate. That's how they think. They're wanting to get it done their way. And people, particularly that are higher on the scoring mechanism of control, confrontation is a natural trait. They don't see it as confrontation. They see it as, I'm going to get this done. I'm going to push through. We're going to get together there as an individual or even in a team environment. They're really looking to do that. So these four, you can see, really have some uniqueness to them that we need to understand of ourselves, but also of others, because then that leads to the whole element of understanding our unique communication. Now, the other part of communication is what's called communication styles. And this is really how a person delivers a discussion or manages a situation. And it's through a method that's labeled hard or soft delivery styles. And I found that several personality test assessments don't include this. A few do, and it's very important to remember how this happens. And a hard score person, and again, this is on a scale of a numerical in most assessments. So the higher the number, the more that you are having this type of trait. Hard score people, in their delivery, they speak very direct. They're in front of you, they're communicating that way. There's not a lot of softness that goes into that communication. Now, they can be perceived as being forceful and also pick up a label of being harsh. And it's true. That's what they are. They don't even recognize they're doing it. They're just trying to get that done. Now, a soft score person, they speak more quietly. The challenge there in that is that they can be received as being timid, and they're not really timid. They're just that way of communicating. They're very much bringing in that element of emotions. And some people can also be labeled as and called soft-spoken. That's all true. It's all that correctly from that way. Now, neither one is correct or incorrect. Each person's delivery is unique to them, and that's what goes back to is our responsibility to understand their communication style and not be offended by that. So you can see in this analogy that we're talking about is if you have someone that's very high in control and equally very high in hard score delivery is going to set a precedence of how that person is perceived. And the same thing with a peace person that's high with a peace personality and a high soft is that. So that will cause that conflict between that, what I just described, those two personality and delivery styles. They usually don't really mesh very well. They have to have some more intimate relationships to really mesh because it'll all be seen the opposite. Now, the other one to remember in a hard or soft score is the gap between their hard score and their soft score determines how fast that person can shift between being direct and being soft-spoken. So if the scores between those are fairly close, then they can switch back and forth and people don't know it. However, if there's a big gap, then they don't shift very quickly or very easily between the two, and they're very more dominant. Again, neither one's right or wrong. It's more about understanding, and the understanding comes from them understanding who they are so they can be aware of it and don't be that being the dominating trait, and vice versa of others understanding that, so that walks through the total intimacy of the relationship. Now, non-understanding of this will lead to being offended, plain and simple. That's why it's so important in a relationship that we know this. This starts a relationship erosion process that, if they don't understand, that can really eventually lead to severing a relationship from pure misunderstanding. So non-understanding will lead you to being offended. Misunderstanding will start eroding the process of relationship building. Now, one of the most misunderstood traits that usually is the core of a communication challenge, and particularly in couples. My wife and I found this out through trial and error, and that's really what's designated as what's called internal audio or external audio decision processing. And what is that? It's really comes from NLP techniques, but it's really how people process. So an internal audio person, they think, they analyze, they process, and defining the outcomes and the decisions, they do it in their mind to reach a decision or an action step. But the key point to remember here is a decision or action is completed before they speak. External audio is the complete opposite. External audio individuals speak out loud as they think, analyze, process, define outcomes, and reach a decision or an action step. The one other key to remember this is what this is really saying is a decision or action step process is starting as they speak. So let's walk through this and say it again. Internal has made the decision before they speak. External audio starts the decision-making process as they speak. So if we don't understand each other's audio process, this really will lead to communication frustration. What that means is you're completely misunderstood. Now, let me give you an example of all this. This is my profile here. So I'm a control, fun personality, but control is high, extremely high. And I've had to work over life to bring that down. And I have to enjoy fun. Now, it's not my definition of fun, of course, but I like to have fun with what I'm doing. I am extremely hard score in my delivery style, very high. And I am one of the extreme internal audio person. I have everything computed, analyzed, dissected, broke down, and then I speak. Benita, my wife, is a perfect peace person. So you can see already the conflict that could be there if we didn't understand this between me being high control and her high perfect. Me between fun and peace. Now the difference is that when a peace person wants to get along and a fun person wants to have fun, that can sometimes goes back to the violation, I'll call it, of a perfect person just wants to get it done correctly. She also has a hard delivery, so we learned that part of our relationship is neither one of us are very soft-spoken. We're really direct in front, and sometimes people will say, how come you guys are always fighting? We're not. We're communicating in our style. It doesn't affect us because we learned this. But one of the biggest lessons we had to learn was Benita, as I am an extreme internal audio, she's an extreme external audio. And that just, before we discovered this, was like one of the biggest communication frustrations from there. Because as I said, I went through intense internal to come to a conclusion. So we'd have a conversation, and then as she's speaking, she would make a statement. I took that statement as she had already made a decision, and I ran with that. What I didn't recognize was it wasn't a statement of decision, it was asking and processing for a decision. So I listened to the first part of what she said and said, okay, that's what you want to do. And I was already gone down that path, thinking that way, and I didn't hear what else she said. And then it just became, she said, what do you mean we're going to do this? I said, well, that's what you said we were going to do. No, I was just talking about it. Well, what do you mean you're talking about it? It's done, not from her. So I had to learn to that, and it's still an everyday process from that understanding each one of those is that, to do that part, I mean, I'll give you a little secret about Benita. She's such an external audio that we learn we can't work in the same room because I'm intense in internal processing in my work. As she is typing or she's writing, she's speaking out loud. And she speaks to herself in questions as she learns to understand that. So we're in a room together. I'm going like, what do you need now? What? I didn't say, I wasn't talking to you. Yes, you were. You asked a question. And of course, being a male, I want to answer the question. I have no question. I was just trying to learn what to do or thinking out loud. I mean, and it's really interesting to have that dynamic. So we've just learned that if we're in the same room and we're working, one, particularly her, puts on a headset. Or I put on a headset so I can't hear, depending on what she's doing. And what we've had is she's gone and she switches. She'll ask a question to herself, and midstream, she'll change and ask me the question. And I'm going like, okay, is that for me or you? And that's what we have to ask. We have to say, okay, and learn to live that way. So what is really from a relationship as husband and wife is key for us to learn this. I mean, another one we learned is I am high control, she's high perfect. When we were cooking together, she would come in and just set the burner temperature, and she would go to great lengths to get it, and then I would walk up and completely change it because we had different objectives. So, and the way that I slice and dice vegetables, it was to get it done. I didn't matter the size, and again, in culinary, you want to have them so much so they cook that, so I understand that, but I would not, when she went to do prep, every piece of a carrot or celery was the same. So we've come up with this model that we use is she does the prep work, I do the physical cooking, and then most of the time I help clean up. But that's where we've just learned that we can be in the room together, in the kitchen, enjoy. And again, when we have a conversation, we have to define is, are we just having a conversation, or are we trying to accomplish something? Because if we're trying to accomplish something, I'm thinking internally then, and she's processing, it doesn't work. But we can really have some great discussions outside of that. So all of this is all about just understanding each other. And this applies then not just to your spouse, but to your friends, to your relationships, because that is key to understanding and how to continue that. Now, not understanding and accepting a person's personality and communication style, their decision-making methodology process, if you don't know that, if you don't accept that, it's going to lead to relational or relationship erosion. And I know it seems like it's very direct, but that's what happens over time, is more offense is taken or misunderstanding, and non-understanding really leads to this. So when you combine this with a person's life woundedness or their arrested development, it eventually leads to a severed relationship. And so as we go through it, as a person matures, as a person understands their life woundedness, their life commands, their arrested development makes those shifts, their personality traits, their speaking, communication style, and their processing will change to somewhat. And so we just have to continue as we build relationships, as we grow them, as we nurture them, that these three elements are always going to be changing and shifting. So keep that in mind. As once you got it, it doesn't stay the same. They will change over time. Now, next week, we're going to take all of this that we just talked about, and we're going to talk about how to communicate with others, and, very important, how to apply it to parenting. Because all of what we just talked about is in a child. However, the change of each one of those elements shift at a far more dramatic pace, particularly pre-puberty, post-puberty, young adult, adult. And so having that understanding with your child and your children of how to do that, and then if you have more than one child, each of those is unique. So it's all about unique communication. That's what we're talking about. Thank you so much. We're looking forward to really continuing this conversation with you next week. Have a great day.